Hey everyone, I've been using the Samsung S25 Ultra for a bit now, and I'm ready to reveal my full review, at least for the past few days anyway. There's always a lot more to come. So in this review, we're going to talk about design and feel, the display, the performance. We're going to go over a little bit of the camera features and maybe show some examples. We'll talk about battery and then software, and then wrap it up on price and value. So if you remember getting a few videos back, I said, I'm not buying it. And what I meant by that is I'm not buying the hype that they were selling on these phones talking about AI, because that was most of the push during their event. But today I'm going to talk about the phone actually in hand and how I feel about it. And by the end of this, you'll know whether this is the right phone for you or if you should wait. So make sure you stick around to the end. So let's talk about the fit and finish. You know, my first impression, I got a first impression video. If you want to check that out here, I'll go in a little more detail there. But for me now, after using it for a period of time, I really like it. It's really impressive. The fact that it's a nice, sleek design, the rounded corners and the squared off sides, giving a better feel in the hand. And the fact that it's got a larger screen is kind of mind-blowing. But we'll talk about that here in just a second. This sleek look and modern design, quite a bit different from what we've had last year and the past few years. This thing being the rounded edge and the squared off corners. To me, this is just a classier look. I do have a case on it that I got from Samsung. It was part of those credit deals. And it's a MagSafe case. That's why you see this ring here. But I wanted the clear case just so I can really see it. I'm really liking the color. And the fact that this is titanium again, just as last year, giving it a little bit less weight is really nice. Is really something that sets it apart from other phones, unless we're talking about the iPhone. So there's so much alike now with the squared off sides and the rounded corners and the titanium. Now the fact that this still seems a little less rounded, it gives it a little different look, and I think it makes it a little classier looking myself. Plus with the smaller form factor of the cameras versus this big old bump, which I think Apple's going to be changing this next year. Now the buttons on the side, they're pretty much the same as last year. Everything's lined up the same with the USB-C here on the bottom, and they did use the same 3.1 USB, so the transfer speeds are about the same. And along with that comes charging. The charging is the same as last year. You have 45-watt wired charging and then 15-watt wireless charging. Hey, I want to take a quick second here and thank you for watching this video on the S25 Ultra. If you would, do me a favor, press that like button down below. It really does help out the channel and helps me to be able to prepare more great content for you. And of course, while you're down there, go ahead and smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any more news, reviews, and how-tos moving forward. I appreciate you. Back to the video. So the design of the phone is definitely an improvement, in my view, from last year. And now we've got to talk about this beautiful screen. You know, it has the 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED screen, and that's pretty much just the same as last year. Same with brightness and the 120 hertz refresh rate. All those are good. And then there's the reflective coating on this thing. That's what sets it apart from the rest of the phones. You don't get as much reflection on this thing. As you can see here, I'll show you from the top-down camera. Take this 9 Pro, for example. If you're taking a look at this, I believe you can see the reflection there. You can see my bar up above and the lights on this thing, very reflective, whereas on this one, not so much, which is a great appeal for outdoors, making it very visible. As I said, it's not as bright as some. They're still at that 2600 nits, where other phones are going closer to 3000 or even more, but it does a very good job where it is. Now, on my first impression, I did put a screen protector on here, which is an anti-reflective screen that I purchased through Samsung, or it was one of the credits anyway. And if you saw that video, it had a lot of bubbles in it when I put it on, and it was very difficult to do. Well, I actually remedied that, because after a couple of days, I was actually able to rub those bubbles right on out. So there are no more bubbles on this screen, which is really nice. And the screen protector that was put on here is actually a unique one because it is anti-reflective too. A lot of times you put screen protectors on these, they're going to add that glare again. But this one's doing really nice. I was down on it on that video because of the bubbles, but it did get resolved. I just want to quickly mention that 120 refresh rate on the screen does help out in battery life, and we'll talk about battery life in just a moment. So the last couple of days, I did get a lot of use out of this thing. The performance on this thing is credible. It's more responsive than most phones, and I believe that's partially because of the new Snapdragon Elite chip, really speeding it up, which is really great. So this thing is a speed demon and very snappy and very responsive to everything that you do. But I do have a concern with it. And that's the 12 gigabytes of RAM that they put in this. It's good for now, but I think longevity-wise, it's not. down the road, because, the other manufacturers already put 16 gigabytes of RAM in their phones. And a lot of that's due to the AI that's coming out. And this is supposed to be an AI king and build all around AI. So I'm really shocked that they didn't put the 16 gigabytes of RAM in it, because they give this thing a 7-year warranty and updates and everything. But you know what? I think that 12 gigabytes of RAM may become a bottleneck here in just a few years. With all the competitors putting 16 gigs of RAM with the new chips, everything's going to be built around that. So this is going to get behind really quick. So that RAM limitation is my biggest concern on performance. Now let's talk a little bit about the cameras. As you know, cameras have always been one of the big pushers on these smartphones. And this year, they really pushed it on AI and talked about using AI to really make this camera perform, especially in low light. That's where they have improved most, is in the low light. The S25 Ultra, its biggest claim to fame is that 200 megapixel camera, which gives you real high resolution. And then, of course, it has the 50 megapixel main shooter. And then this year, the 50 megapixel ultra wide to give you better shots and actually better micro photography. Then they're still carrying that 10 megapixel 3x zoom lens, which is really kind of its low end shooter on this thing, as well as its selfie camera, which is only a 12 megapixel selfie camera. Now, the biggest question for us all, did the AI really increase the performance of the photos on the S25 series this year? Well, I took some sample shots and I got some comparisons here I want to go through with you. Before we look at it, I just want to tell you, I just looked at the main camera photos and we're comparing those. I'll do a separate video where we get into all the zooming and all the extra features. But for this one, I just want to show you the baseline camera photos, and we're going to zoom in on those photos and see how they are picking up detail, and has Samsung really improved it? Because I believe in looking at this will actually give us a baseline whether the rest of the cameras are improved through AI and their processing. Let's get started. Okay, here we start out with the Samsung S25 Ultra, and then we're going to fade in here to the iPhone. And you can see they're both pretty much the same. Their dynamic range is good, but the iPhone is just a bit clearer because of their 24 megapixel processing, where they do the pixel bending, so they get a little more detail. And you can see that here, where Samsung, they're using a little bit of AI to improve it, but it still doesn't quite keep up there with the iPhone 16, as you can see here. And remember, all these are your base camera, 50 megapixel camera, and I'm just zooming in on the photo here, and you can see here the S25 is a little bit washed out. It's not quite as clear and crisp as the iPhone. Again, that's because of that 24 megapixel versus 12. But if you add the 50 megapixels to the Samsung S25 Ultra, it gets a little bit clear, but still not up there with the iPhone. And then if you go a little step further, you could go ahead and use the 200 megapixel camera on the S25 Ultra. And let's see if that really gives us anything. Look at the tree and the detail there. Now, when you change over, you can see there's more details in that tree on the left in this photo. So the Ultra does a little bit better, but it's still not quite up there. It does more color saturation. Now, if you throw in the Pixel, you see the Pixel, I believe, is actually a little clearer than the iPhone. The iPhone saturates it a little bit more. And then if you zoom in on that photo, you still got a 12 megapixel on the Pixel, but it's clearer in the imagery. You may not be able to see that here on the screen, but I can see it clear myself. And then if you add the 50 megapixel camera on the Pixel 9 Pro, it does even better. And now I want to be honest with you. A lot of these reviews, they say you have to use the main cameras on these things to compare them. And it's really not fair if you do it that way. And a lot of those are the Apple people, because the Apple, we know, it does that pixel bending and gives you a 24 megapixel view with a lot more detail. So yeah, it's easy for them to say, just use your main shooter. But if you go ahead and bump these other two using their 50 megapixel photo shooting, you can definitely get clear or even surpass the Apples with the Pixel 9 Pro. But the point of our review today is, did they really improve the S25 Ultra enough to be that much more competitive with these others? And I'd say not really. They add a little more AI, but you can see the AI in it, and it's not quite there yet. Maybe with some updates and upgrades of the software, it could improve. And that's another reason why I say I don't believe that this phone is quite feature-proof. With the lack of RAM to really do that processing, I think it's going to fall behind. But don't get me wrong here. They all, even this phone, take beautiful photos. And if you're not pixel peeping, then you're going to love this phone. And the fact that it has that 200 megapixel camera on to really be able to zoom in on your imagery, that's a great plus. But as far as have the cameras really made a leap? No. So upgraded to this phone simply because of the cameras? not a reason. As you can see here, just a quick side-by-side video. Apple still outperforms them, I think, is cleaner, especially when you come to zooming inside the video, zooming it out. Apple beats them all. And then Pixel's right there behind it, and I still think the Samsung comes in third place. So you see, the photo quality is generally good, and maybe with the AI enhancement, but I still think they're not up to par with the iPhone or even the Pixel as of yet. Now, of course, your results may vary. I had a cloud-covered day, so it didn't really give me a whole lot to work with. But the truth is, all the cameras had to deal with the same environment. And in my opinion, it felt like the S25 came in dead last. A more in-depth camera comparison is to come. I'll compare it with the other phones and do a whole lot more for those that are really interested in that. Now, I do want to talk about battery life on this thing. The battery life is excellent. It's the same size battery as last year, but I believe the performance difference comes from the new Snapdragon Elite and making it so efficient. This battery, for example, right now, I'm at 86%, and I used this phone this morning to drive to church, was a good 20 miles away. I used it as my Bible during church the whole time. It's pretty much been on the whole time for the last 3 hours. It's at 86%. And this last week, I used it for a full day at work and got home, and it still had 70%. So they really do have that battery efficiency down on the S25 Ultra. The hardware remained the same, with the exception, as you know, of this S Pen, which no longer has Bluetooth. Now, a lot of people feel that they've been cheapened by that or cheated because of that Bluetooth, but you know what? It's not something I've really focused on and used. I didn't use the Bluetooth all that much. It still works just like the pen should work, and it's fast and smooth. You could do everything you want to do on it, right on the screen, whatever. Pull it out and take a quick note. That's one thing that I really was always impressed with the Note series and with this phone now, is you could take it out and make yourself a quick note, a memory, real fast, because you always have the pen with you in its silo. So I do like the fact that it still has the S Pen. Bluetooth, I can give or take it. That's going to be a personal decision. I want to talk about software. This thing, like I said earlier, is very fast, very smooth with the software, very responsive. And then there's the One UI. The One UI has made quite a few changes. Now, it's going to take a bit of time to learn all the changes, but it's mostly dedicated to AI integration in this phone, such as the sidebar here. You've got these different AI features now, and AI integrated in the phone where you hit the power button, and now Gemini pops up and you can ask it anything, like, how is the weather today?
Today in Medford, there'll be showers with a forecasted...
There's a lot of integration and tools built into this. I'll cover that in another video because there's too much to talk about. But the important thing to remember on this is this thing is being run by Gemini, which of course is made by Google in the Pixel. And Gemini is very strong AI and can do a lot, but still not where it should be yet. So in the event, there are a lot of promises made that aren't quite to the phone yet. You know, Apple's made that mistake where they tell you what's coming and they take too long to get there. Even Pixel did that. So the AI integration isn't perfectly embedded yet or perfectly function, and it's still a learning curve. I'd say it's in beta. And because of that, they offer you the Gemini Advance for 6 months free when you purchase the phone. Pixel did a year, but guess what? They're both going to expire the same time in August. And what that means, it becomes a subscription model to the phone, and it's $20 a month. So that's the cautionary focus on this phone this year is AI, which is what they are really promoting. You need to determine if it's something that you really need or is an improvement for your lifestyle. And then I just want to say AI is no reason to purchase this phone because this is actually being pushed back to all the other Samsung phones as well. Once they decide to release Android 15 on them and One UI 7, which isn't there yet, this is the only phone that has it. My suspicion is that they're going to be releasing the Android 15 and One UI 7 after the official release of this phone, which is what, February 7th? So sometime after that, you could probably look to see to getting these phones upgraded. Is there a lot of change to make it worth upgrading? Well, from the S24 Ultra, probably not, unless you're just one of those that always have to have the new phone and upgrade every year. It is a good time to upgrade because you'll get the most trade-in value on your last year's model. I believe they're giving $900 trade-in value for the S25 Ultra. And if you act soon enough, you could take advantage of all those extra. They give you an additional $350 credit towards other things as well. You can get that credit and get earbuds or buy cases like I did. So if you're an annual upgrader, yeah, now's a good time to do it unless you use that S Pen Bluetooth all the time. That'd be the only reason you might want to hold off. Now, if you're moving from another manufacturer, such as Apple, well, now is the perfect time. You'll get a good trade-in on your iPhone. But now Samsung is sporting the closest thing to an Apple design with this phone they ever have. Has more features, and right now, more AI feature rich than the iPhone at this time. Of course, all that's going to change shortly, so you want to take all that information with a grain of salt. Now, like I said, there's going to be a lot more videos to come on the S25 Ultra and comparisons. If there's anything that you want to know or a question that you didn't get answered today, leave it down in the comments below, and I'd love to answer that in future videos. And if you haven't seen my first impression, I do recommend that you watch that because I did give a little more detail on the use case with this phone that I wasn't very pleased with. And you can check that out right here. Until next time, God bless.